When you fill up your car, do you stop at the first click off of the pump? Or do you go beyond 4, 5, 6 clicks? Or do you go as far as wanting to see the fuel get near the top of the filler neck? Well, if that's the case, then you're running the risk of a bill of hundreds of pounds, possibly even thousands. Putting as much fuel into your car as possible is known as topping off. And if you have a diesel, then there's not too much to be concerned about. But if you have a petrol, you run the risk of damaging your Evaporative Emission Control System, also known as your EVAP system. Petrol is volatile. It evaporates into the atmosphere. So if you didn't have an EVAP system on your car and you were to fill it up with petrol, even though the car would be switched off and not running, it would still be producing emissions because the petrol would be evaporating into the atmosphere. And if you had a garage, your garage is going to smell of petrol. And if your garage is attached to your house, then your house may also smell of petrol. And you may like the smell of petrol, but what is not an opinion is that petrol fumes are bad for your health. They can cause drowsiness, dizziness, headaches. If you breathe in enough of the stuff, it can affect your muscles, your heart, or it could even put you in a coma. Here I have the fuel filler flap and access to my fuel filler neck. So fairly simple, put the pump in and squeeze. That's all there is to filling up with petrol, surely. A tank, a little neck to fill it up with. No, it's not that simple. There's plenty of pipes, valves and sensors and even a filter in place to make sure you can fill and store petrol safely. Behind this wheel is a plastic shield, and behind that plastic shield is a plastic box filled with little activated carbon pellets, loads of them. And there's a pipe that comes from the fuel tank to one end of that box. And what happens is the petrol fumes travel through the box, through those activated carbon pellets, and those pellets absorb the fumes. And there's another tube at the other end of the box that then makes its way to the engine. How it basically works is that active carbon filter behind the rear wheel stores petrol fumes when the engine is switched off. And when you switch the engine on and the engine's electronic control unit, which is basically the engine's brain, when the engine's brain is happy that it can burn those fumes, it opens what is known as a purge valve. That then sucks the fumes out of the pellets and into the engine to be burnt, meaning the pellets are now free to accept more petrol fumes, and the whole process starts again. You shouldn't need to replace the active carbon filter on a car. They usually last the life of the car, unless of course you damage them. And how can you damage them? Well, putting too much petrol in your car. What can happen is petrol can be forced through the input pipe of the active carbon filter, and actual liquid petrol can come into contact with those carbon pellets. When that happens, those pellets are toast, they're done. You need to replace the active carbon filter. When liquid petrol contacts them, they fizz, they start to stick together and they no longer work as intended. You could probably use them for a barbecue if you wanted, but they're not going to be storing petrol fumes any longer. Your car's ECU, its electronic control unit, that thing I mentioned earlier, basically its brain, is designed and programmed to figure out if there is a problem with your EVAP system. And if it figures that out, it's going to put a light on your dashboard. But you may figure it out first. There are some symptoms. One, your car's stinking of petrol. Another is you go to fill up at the petrol station and the pump keeps clicking off. You can't get any fuel in, or you go and fill up and the fuel comes out and on your leg. That can happen. Also, if petrol makes it as far as the purge valve, well, it can make your engine run poorly. There is a check valve in the petrol tank to try and prevent liquid petrol reaching the active carbon filter. No liquid petrol should be in that active carbon filter, only petrol fumes. But I would not rely on that check valve. It's not worth the risk. Getting a little bit more fuel in your car so you can get that little bit further at the risk of damaging components. Also, if you did have a problem and went to a garage, they may not diagnose the right thing first time. So you may end up spending money on things that don't need replacing before they actually figure out the problem. Some cars are awkward when it comes to filling up with petrol anyway. You have to twist the nozzle in a certain way, or you can't squeeze the pump fully, otherwise it just keeps clicking off and it won't accept fuel. That's quite typical, but If you're repositioning the nozzle and only squeezing the pump gently and it's still not accepting fuel, then that's a signal that there may be a problem. People in other videos have asked me when I'm doing fuel economy tests to fill the tank to the top of the neck so I can see where the fuel is, I can drive, and then I can fill it up to the exact same point and therefore get an accurate measurement of how much fuel I've used. But I don't do this for the reasons I've explained in this video. You could just fill to the first click on the pump, but the difference between when the pump clicks off can be fairly significant. Half a litre, maybe even a litre. It depends how quick the fuel is flowing out, and that depends on how many people are using the pumps at that petrol station, and also just how the fuel splashes when it goes in. So the first click of the pump is likely to be half a litre difference from another time you do the first click of the pump. Therefore, it's not accurate. And if you're only using 5 litres of fuel, half a litre, that's 10%. But if you're using 100 litres of fuel over multiple tanks of fuel, then the difference is smaller. So if you want a really accurate measurement of your fuel economy, you want to fill up to the first click, use 3 or 4 tanks and keep note of your receipts of how many litres you've put in and how many miles you've done. And after your 3rd or 4th tank, do the first click again, and then that half a litre difference between the first time you filled up and that last time you filled up is not going to be great if you're using, say, 100 litres of fuel. It's 0.5%, not 10% if you're only using 5 litres over a short journey. Actually, I shouldn't have said short journey, because 5 litres in a modern car is typically going to be getting you 40, 50 miles, which is, it's not a significant journey, but it's not a short journey, and why it's so hard to figure out the accurate fuel economy of short journeys unless you risk damaging your EVAP system. Well, I hope this video helps. If you think it's going to help you save on a potential repair, it's unlikely to happen, but it may happen, and in my opinion, it's not worth the risk. If you think it's going to help you save on that repair, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy. That takes away a big stress from the owner of that car that you're using to practice your driving in. Via the link at the moment, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to insure your own car, I recommend checking out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest. And you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like without having to refill out the whole quote form. Just change the car and recalculate, which makes it a really useful way of trying to compare how much it costs to insure different cars. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.